tonight, Robert Jenrick, the UK government's Minister for Immigration. He was elected to Parliament in 2014, winning the Newark by-election. He's since served as Housing Secretary under Boris Johnson and was in the health team in the Liz Truss government. Stephen Kinnock is Labour's shadow on immigration. The Welsh MP and son of the former Labour leader Neil has represented Aberavon since 2015. He worked at the World Economic Forum before that. If anything of consequence has happened in Scottish politics over the last several decades, then Ruth Wishart has no doubt written and spoken about it. She's been a broadcaster, journalist and commentator across the media scene and is also a long-time supporter of Scottish independence. Lionel Shriver says she's lost friends over her political views, but she does have an army of fans for being an award-winning author. Of her 17 books, most notable so far is We Need to Talk About Kevin. She's written for many newspapers and is now a regular columnist for The Spectator. And Ian Hislop has been editor of Private Eye for over 30 years, the best-selling magazine that lampoons and investigates in equal measure. He's also been a team captain of TV's second best current affairs panel show, Have I Got News For You, since it began in 1990. Good evening to our panel, to our audience here, which tonight, because we are in rugby, reflects electoral support for our political parties here in England. And of course, good evening to all of you watching at home. Every Thursday night, Question Time trends on social media, so why not join in and let's hear what you've got to say and what you're thinking about it all. So let's take our first question tonight, which is from Simon Rush.
Does Nicola Sturgeon resigning as First Minister mean the end of Scottish independence?
Ian, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, obvious first person to come to.
It's an opinion, and that's all we can have.
OK, I think, on the whole, this side of the border, Nicola Sturgeon gets a fairly easy ride in terms of coverage, and a lot of the tributes to her seem to me well over the top and not terribly well informed. I mean, she said 3 weeks ago that she had plenty in the tank and that she was nowhere near quitting. Then she quit. That makes her a standard politician, not a saint. And I do think that in terms of independence, I'm sure the movement will go on. There are plenty of people here who'll take it on. I think what we'll lose is the cult of personality, which I think will be a good thing. I think it'll be a good thing for Scotland, and I think it'll be a good thing for everyone else.
Now, do you think it makes independence more or less likely? Do you have a view on that?
I think it makes it slightly less likely because, you know, during COVID she was on the telly every night. She had a presidential style, and she had the advantage of having a British Prime Minister who was, you know, an old Etonian Brexiteer twice. Now, she hasn't got that. So the narrative that everything in Scotland is the fault of English public school boys, it won't wash anymore. And her own loan scandal, I know we've got a dodgy loan scandal at the BBC, but there is a dodgy loan scandal with the SNP. There's the ferries. Staggering waste of money, and there will be an inquiry, I'm sure. There are real issues in Scotland that haven't been addressed at all. And I think with her gone, they may now be addressed. So that's my opinion.
Ruth?
Well, how much of that can I disagree with in two sentences? First of all, you said that Nicola Sturgeon got an easy ride from the media down here. That's a load of cobblers, to use a technical phrase, because, you know, I was reading...
Yeah, I recognise it.
I'm sure. I was reading the papers on the way down on the train today, and one paper, which I won't name because I've only just bought it for the first time today, called her that bloody woman. And that bloody woman was, you know, was what they used to call Mrs. Thatcher. Nicola Sturgeon loathed and detested Mrs. Thatcher. I think you're right about one thing. I think the cult of personality is not good for politics. But if you remember, before Nicola Sturgeon, there was Alex Salmond, and Alex Salmond, when he left politics, or he didn't leave politics, but when he left the leadership of the SNP, everybody said, who on earth could replace Alec? And Nicola came along and...
Well, except, hang on, I mean, Nicola was very much there side by side with Alex, and that's not the situation now. And the question is, does Nicola Sturgeon resign?
He's not the most distinguished figure in Scottish politics to look back on, is he?
Does Nicola Sturgeon resigning mean the end of Scottish independence, or certainly does it make it less likely?
Well,
what's your answer to that?
I think it will have an impact.
And what do you think that impact will be?
Well, just if I could just elaborate very briefly, all the commentators from the unionist parties have said that, you know, this is glad tidings of great joy, and and they're all dancing on the political grave of Nicola Sturgeon, and various people, including some of your colleagues, have said things like, you know, this is a great gift for the Labour Party. I don't think that's true, because if you look at the demographics in Scotland, there's only one age group now, which unhappily is my age group. There's only one age group,
but Ruth,
which is
you
hostile.
haven't answered the question yet.
Well, I am answering the
well,
question.
are you? I haven't heard it. Does it mean the end of Scottish independence, or
No.
at least does it make it less likely?
No, it doesn't mean the end of Scottish independence, and I don't think it makes it less likely. I think there's going to be a period during which, a period of turmoil, inevitably, until a new leader is picked. But no, because of what I was trying to say in response, is because almost every age group in Scotland is pro-independence, I think that will continue. I think the independence movement's got its own momentum.
Robert.
Well, I don't know is the answer.
Were you glad to see her go?
As a unionist, I hope that it does have an impact on the cause. I think, without question, Nicola Sturgeon is a very significant figure in Scottish politics and public life. But I think she, rather like you heard from Ian, she leaves behind her no shortage of problems which her and the SNP have failed to tackle. You do see in Scotland today life expectancy falling. It's the lowest of any of the nations of the United Kingdom. You see education standards falling, when once we look to Scotland as having some of the highest educational standards.
And what
you
was
see
the
drug
response?
deaths soaring.
What was the response in government when she resigned? Because obviously it took a lot of people by surprise. Were you cheering? Or were you thinking,
No,
I don't know, we're not worried about who's coming next?
I don't think anyone was cheering. I think people, anyone who serves in office, whether that's in the cabinet or leading a devolved administration, can understand that whilst it's an enormous privilege to hold these positions, it does carry with it some burden, particularly for your family and loved ones. So I think I and others understand why Nicola Sturgeon might want to move on. But what we would like to see in government is that this new phase that Scottish politics now moves into is one which is more unifying than the very divisive one that we've lived through since the referendum, and that we in Westminster, as the government of the United Kingdom, can work as productively and constructively as possible with the Scottish government, whether that's led by the SNP or anybody else, to tackle the issues that actually matter to the public in Scotland, and not be distracted by these constitutional questions which have just proved incredibly divisive.
Man there in the blue suit.
I share the view with a former Lord Advocate that the Treaty of Union, as an international treaty, is in perpetuity and cannot be broken in any event, so independence should constitutionally never happen.
Okay, woman here in the blue sweater.
I think when you look at the planning and all the discussion that's gone on, I do question whether they actually have a vision of how it would look to be separated from the UK.
This is the SNP you're talking about.
In the SNP. And I think there isn't one. I'm not seeing a clear one.
Okay. Stephen?
Nicola Sturgeon was an impressive politician, or is. I mean, I'm not talking about the past tense, but as a leader. You know,
and the impact on independence?
And she gave a gracious and thought-provoking speech yesterday. I don't think it will make a huge amount of difference, to be frank, because I think support for independence is drifting away in Scotland. The realisation of the people of Scotland is that politics is about much more than one single issue, one obsession about one particular narrative. It is about the cost of living crisis. It's about the National Health Service. It's about antisocial behaviour. It's about the bread and butter issues that really matter to people. And I'm afraid that Nicola Sturgeon's single-minded obsession with that one issue, the SNP's single-minded obsession, has distracted them, as the government of Scotland, from getting on with the people's priorities. And what I really hope is that we will see nationalism as a cause withering on the vine, because in the dangerous and turbulent world in which we live, we need politicians who bring people and communities together, not constantly dividing. And the one thing I would say is at least Nicola Sturgeon had the self-awareness to resign when she realised that she was becoming an electoral liability. What I hope now is that Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of the UK, will do the same, so that we can have a general election and get this awful government out of the way, so that Labour can take over and get our country back on track.
I'll let you come back in a minute. I can know you want to come in. Let me just ask, are there any people here in this audience, I appreciate that we are in England, but who are supportive of Nicola Sturgeon's view and of the SNP? Obviously, if we were in Scotland, we would see a fair few hands. But here, nobody. OK. Let me bring Lionel in. She's not spoken, and then I'll come back to you, Ruth, I promise. Lionel.
Well, I think this is a blow for Scottish nationalism, but I don't think we should forget that it's also, and importantly, a blow for radical trans activism, which is really what brought her down. I thought that her resignation, while fulsome, was disingenuous, that suddenly, whereas 4 months ago she was raring to go on to the next election, suddenly she was too exhausted. I find that dishonest because it was clear that things were going badly for her, and most importantly, this gender self-ID bill was wildly unpopular in Scotland, as well as in the rest of the UK. And I would have admired her more if she had simply acknowledged that and said, this is not going my way, this is bringing down my party. And
obviously, it had cross-party support at Holyrood.
Yes, but it did not have popular support. It had very little popular support. And I have to say, as a woman, I find the "I'm simply too tired" reason for quitting a bit girly.
OK. Ruth, you'll be desperate. Let me get the audience. I promise I am going to let you come in. I promise. Let me just hear a bit more of the audience. Yes, the woman there in the white shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that scares me the most is, yet again, the headlines are about a politician stepping down rather than the important issues like the state of our National Health Service and immigration at the moment. I'm sure Nicola Sturgeon will agree that there's more important things to talk about on national news than the fact that she's stepping down and someone else is just going to take over.
OK. Ruth, you're desperate to come back in.
I am, because all of the reaction to this and across the media, certainly across the English media, has been that the Scottish National Party and the government, who are in government in Scotland, and I'm not a member of any party, but the Scottish National Party, who are in government in Scotland, keep being accused of being obsessed with independence. I mean, the party was founded in order to get independence for Scotland. It seems very strange that people think that a party founded to get independence is obsessed with getting independence. I mean, that's its raison d'etre. That was why it came about. And Lionel, I mean, too girly, come on. I mean, I happen to agree with you on GRR, and I happen not to agree with Nicola Sturgeon, as it happens. But, you know, when Jacinda Ardern resigned, and thank you, and Nicola Sturgeon resigned, both of them went at a time of their own choosing, which I think is unusual for a politician, and it's quite important that, that they were able to do that, and they were able to trust their own instincts and go at a time of their choosing. I think that matters, and I don't think it was anything to do with them being women. I venture to suggest that some male MPs, we mentioned one in passing, Mr Johnson, had to be dragged cricking and screaming out of number 10. I mean, maybe the male ego had something to do with it, and maybe the female ego is a little less fragile.
Well, she survived 8 years and 7 as deputy. She didn't suddenly feel tired, did she?
No, she didn't suddenly feel tired, but I think
she also left saying, classically said, most people in Scotland agree with me that there should be independence. Now, as a definition of most, what are the polls at the moment? Just over 50-50?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, because the polls have just moved to 47 to 53 in favour of no. But a month ago...
It's not a huge majority, is it?
No, it's not. And I think she recognises, and I think most people, including me, recognise that there has to be a significant majority in favour of independence before we can contemplate it. I get that. I really do get that. But it's been 50-50 for maybe the last 6 or 7 years now, certainly since 2014. And let's remember that when David Cameron went to the country with a breakfast, probably that too,
I was waiting for someone to say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
A dog's breakfast.
Yeah, well, he had 2 referendums, both of which were utterly useless.
Yes, but the point is that he went on a Brexit referendum on 36.9% of the population. That was the percentage that elected him. And now, you know, Nicola Sturgeon has won 8 elections in a row, and suddenly that's not mandate enough.
No, but it's not the elections winning. It's the number of people who agree with independence as the only issue. And if it's 50-50, you're going to end up with a Brexit situation in Scotland over the single most important issue. And, you know, it's been terrific in the UK, Brexit, you've probably noticed.
OK.
So we've got another union to break up.
All right. I'm going to move on. But before I do, I want to mention that Question Time is in Cardiff next week. The week after that, we're in Sunderland. So Cardiff and then Sunderland. If you'd like to come to either show, go to the Question Time website. Address is here. And we'd love to see you. Just follow the instructions there and come along. Right, let's take another question now from... And you'll be... The lady in the white shirt, you'll be glad we're taking this question. Debbie Lynn.
With the recent protests at an asylum seekers hotel in Merseyside, do you think having a clear working asylum policy would solve the problem?
Well, rather handily, we have the Immigration Minister and Shadow Immigration Minister here, so let's get it from the horse's mouths. Robert.
Well, the first thing to say about the protests that happened in Knowsley is that it's always unacceptable to break the law, and there is no excuse whatsoever for the violence that we saw in Merseyside. But to understand is not to condone, and there are some who see the public's frustration about the small boats crossing the channel as a sort of phenomenon to be managed and not as a warning to be heeded, and we don't agree. We think that it is absolutely vital that we as a country get a grip on this issue. We live in an age of mass migration. The United Nations has said there's over 100 million people on the move today, many of whom obviously would want to come to the UK as one of the most prosperous countries in the world.
So how do you propose to resolve it? I mean, there has been a report recently, and the Home Secretary wrote the foreword to this report. It's made a number of suggestions, one of which was introducing laws making it impossible to claim asylum in the UK at all after travelling from a safe country. Is that something you endorse and would like to see come in?
It is.
So there would be no way of claiming asylum at all if you came from a safe country?
The way we view this is a simple...
Just to be clear, that's what you're saying.
Let me answer your question.
Well, you said yes. I was just double-checking.
Well, I will expand on that. The way we view this is that if you come here illegally in a small boat, and remember these are mostly young men leaving France, a safe country, they are soliciting people, smugglers, to ferry them across the channel, breaking our laws. They're often throwing their documents into the sea so they can exploit our human rights laws, that is criminality, and that we shouldn't allow that to happen. And so if you come in that form, you will be detained, you will be processed in days or weeks, not months and years, and then you will be removed from the country, either back to where you came from or to a safe third country where you can have your claim handled. And by doing that, we not only tackle criminality, the gangs that feed off it, but we enable this country to target the resources we have, which are finite, the housing, the school places,
but that
the
is
sponsors
different from what you've just said, Robert, because the question I asked you is, do you support the idea, which Suella Braverman, she says she doesn't endorse everything in this report, but she has nonetheless written a foreword to it, introducing a law to make it impossible to claim asylum in the UK if you have travelled here from a safe country?
Yes, the asylum and immigration system we want to build, and we're going to be legislating on this shortly, is one where if you come here illegally in breach of our laws, for all the reasons I've described, you will not have a route to life in the UK. That does not mean that we are not a generous and compassionate country. It does not mean that we don't want to help people who are fleeing persecution and war and human rights abuses.
Because, of course, some of those people who come on small boats will be claiming asylum,
We'll
genuinely.
do that, Fiona, through resettlement schemes, through safe and legal routes, like the ones we've had recently for Ukraine, for Hong Kong, for Syria, for Afghanistan. And that enables us, instead of supporting those people who are in safe countries, like France, to target our resource on helping the people who are most in need in the world. And remember, last year, we issued more humanitarian visas as a country under those schemes than in any year since the end of the Second World War.
Let me get round the
so
rest
we are doing a lot, and those people who say we're not generous as a country are wrong. We just want to do this in a targeted way that beats the criminal gangs.
Right, so we've now got this from the Immigration Minister, that is the plan, to make it impossible to claim asylum in the UK. after travelling from a safe country? Your response?
Well, it really feels like nothing works in this country after 13 years of Tory failure. There's 7.2 million people on the NHS waiting list, there's a cost of living crisis, and the asylum backlog is just part of that story. 166,000 outstanding cases, thousands of people in hotels.
It was 500,000 when the last Labour government
that figure is complete and utter nonsense, Robert. It's based on the old methodology. If you look at the figures based on the government's own methodology introduced in 2011, the Labour government in 2010 had less than 20,000 outstanding cases. So you better get the statistics right.
Well, the question is, with the recent protests,
it was worse with them. What about now?
No,
hang on. The question is, with the recent protests, do you think having a clear working asylum policy would solve the problem? And if you do, what should it be?
Yeah, yes, it would, but that means doing the hard yards of actually clearing the backlog. 166,000 on that backlog. The result of that backlog is people are in hotels and inappropriate accommodation, costing the taxpayer over £6 million a day. So we've got to get the backlog sorted out. And rather than gimmicks and bringing in new legislation that isn't required and having the unethical, unworkable and unaffordable Rwanda policy that clearly isn't going to be the returns deal that the government keeps talking about. They keep talking about returning people to safe countries, but when we left the European Union, we left the Dublin Convention, which was about enabling us to return asylum seekers.
It didn't work.
And the Dublin agreement didn't work. The botched Brexit deal that Boris Johnson did took us out of the Dublin Convention. We've got no returns agreement at all in place now. So where are they going to return these people to? We've got to get a deal in place,
Stephen,
and we've got to clear the backlog.
Under the Dublin Agreement,
and by the way, under the Tories, they downgraded the Home Office officials that used to be reviewing asylum cases from £40,000 a year to £25,000 a year. The result of that is you get less experienced people with less expertise, taking decisions on cases that are more open to appeals, thus adding to the backlog. It is a complete and utter shambles. 13 years they've had to sort this out. It is completely unacceptable.
Very briefly on the Dublin Convention.
Under the Dublin Agreement, which was the agreement that we had with the EU, less than 1% of the people who we asked the EU to take back ever went back.
So how are you going to do it now, then?
That didn't work.
So how will you return them to those countries now?
Because what we're going to do is different. We are going to remove people to a safe third country, like Rwanda, so that you break the incentives on the people's so that people don't come across the channel illegally.
It's amazing you can still say Rwanda with a straight face. I mean, that's an extraordinary achievement.
Why do you say that, Ian?
But deporting people to the scene of a former Holocaust still strikes me as a bit teenage.
Ian, the High Court, before Christmas, studied all of our plans and studied the situation in Rwanda and concluded not only was Rwanda lawful, was our policy lawful, but Rwanda is a safe country.
It's not a safe country. It's just about to go to war again.
You disagree with the High Court, do you?
Yes, I do, because Rwanda is about to go to war again with one of its neighbours, the DEC. It's not safe. And all this talk about processing people. I mean, peas get processed. People don't get processed. I find that truly offensive.
There's lots of hands up. Let me hear from some of you in the audience. Right, the man in the blue shirt with the glasses, yes.
This issue of unauthorised channel crossings obviously hasn't just started. It's been going on for some time. And Mr Jenrick said it's vital to get a grip of it. And to bring it down to a sort of binary question, why hasn't the government? Is it that it can't? And there might be very good legal reasons or whatever it can't. Is it because it can't or because it doesn't want to? Now, there's all sorts of sophisticated things behind that, but it does seem to me to be a binary choice. Can't it or doesn't it want to?
OK, I'll come back to you, Robert. I just want to hear a bit more from the audience. Yes, the man here in the front in the blue sweater.
Yeah, hi. I happen to agree with the bill, but how many more hotels are we going to have to fill before we accept there's a longer-term problem with immigration in this country? We can't just keep putting people in hotels after hotel, especially in this area. We're filling up Grade 2 listed buildings with people, part of the processing issue. We can't just keep housing people in hotels and expect the problem to change.
And what do you think of the Immigration Minister's suggestion that we should basically come over on a small boat, that's it, you won't go to Farmers Home
I
anyway?
happen to agree with him, yeah.
OK, the man behind.
Going back slightly, are we now saying that Rwanda is safer than Knowsley?
I think you are, aren't you?
Well, look, we do think Rwanda is a safe country, and the High Court is...
Safer than Knowsley?
No. We're saying that Rwanda is a safe country to send someone to.
Okay.
But look, if I could just say, it's a serious point. I spent 80% of my days as a Home Office minister dealing with some of the worst people in society. I deal with human traffickers. I deal with drugs dealers. I deal with serious organised criminals. And I can tell you, the only way that we will beat these gangs is by changing the incentives. And for as long as they think that they can put somebody in a rubber dinghy, ferry them across the channel, they will come to the UK and find a life here, then thousands of more people will do that. They'll place their lives in danger, they'll place the lives of children in danger, and we'll feed criminals, the most evil forms of criminals, all over the world as a result. And so, you can mock policies like Rwanda, but these are hard choices. These are hard choices. If you want to beat the human traffickers, if you want to stop this industry, you have to change the incentives.
Excuse me, has it
and by doing that, people will not cross the channel.
Has it ever
they will
occurred
stay
to you,
in a
Robert,
safe country like
Robert,
France.
has it ever occurred to you that the reason people come here illegally is because you've closed off just about every legal
No, that's
route?
not true. That's not true.
Of course it is.
No, it's not. It's palpably not true. It's palpably not true. Since 2015, 440,000 people have come to the UK on humanitarian visas. Last year, more people came on humanitarian visas than any year since the Second World War.
Robert, let me ask you a question
It is a naive argument.
Let me ask you a question which was
by increasing safe and legal routes will stop the problem.
Let me ask you a question which your colleague put to Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, which she struggled to answer, I think it's fair to say. And he asked, just because this comes to your point, I'm a 16-year-old orphan from an East African country escaping a war zone and religious persecution. I have a sibling legally in the United Kingdom. What is a safe and legal route for me to come to the United Kingdom? What's the answer to that?
Well, the answer is that we do have safe and legal routes that are available to people all over the world.
If he comes from an East African country, where would that be?
We have, for example, a community resettlement scheme where people can present to the UNHCR and through that find a passage to the UK.
Because the Permanent Secretary said he accepted there are some countries where that would not be possible.
Well, that's where there wouldn't be a reason, because the UNHCR don't have operations and wouldn't consider those people to be refugees. But in a sense, I disagree with the premise of your question.
Well, it was your Conservative colleague's question, in fairness, not mine.
The UK has finite resources. We cannot offer safe passage to anyone from any part of the world who wants to come to the UK. I've already said that we are one of the most generous countries in the world, and I refute...
You take far fewer than most people in most countries in Europe.
No, that is not true. That's not true. Look at the Homes for Ukraine scheme, which is the first anniversary
Robert, overall the numbers overall the numbers are
And the gentleman in the audience perfectly understandably said that he doesn't want to see more hotels being filled with asylum seekers. I don't either.
Okay.
I don't think people do.
We'll process them quicker and then let them work.
We have to be honest about the pressures that we have as a country and to focus the resources we have on those people who need it most. And to me, they are people like families with young children. They're people like countries for whom we have a particular historic and moral obligation, like Hong Kong. They're places near to us, like Ukraine. We cannot just have an open-door immigration policy to anyone from anywhere in the world. And I think, in honesty, that is what Stephen is suggesting, that we open our doors, we let millions of people...
Well, Stephen, let me ask, Stephen, very briefly...
precious resources.
Lana, I'm going to come to you, I promise. But very briefly, what would your answer be to Tim Loughton's question?
So...
Let the child come in?
So, safe and legal routes are required, and yes, we've got Ukraine, Hong Kong and Afghanistan. By the way, the Afghanistan programme is not working
briefly, because I want to bring Lana in. Would you create more safe routes?
We need a proper deal with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, which enables people to report through safe and legal routes at the country of origin and to find a safe way to the UK. One final point on Rwanda.
No, I'm going to bring Lana. Let me bring Lana. Sorry.
Thank you.
There are two big pull factors for this country. One of them is that we have a non-contributory welfare system, so that you get access to the NHS and housing support, etc., without having paid a dime into the system, or 10p. But the other one is obviously that you're in like Flint. If you get here, you get to stay, and word is out. All these people have smartphones. And the only thing we can do really is to withdraw from the European Convention of Human Rights. Now, I know that for the Tories that's very awkward. It's not a good look. But this and 2 or 3 other treaties are completely tying the judicial hands, and all these human rights lawyers who basically believe that the UK doesn't have the right to reject anyone who wants to come here. They believe in open borders. And, you know, with appeal after appeal, nobody gets sent back, and that's what's wrong with the Rwanda idea. Rwanda was conceived, of course, not because it's a safe place to be, but because it's far away and because it's where these people do not want to be. So that's the whole point of it. It's meant to be. It's meant to mean that 2 friends part in Calais, and we'll see each other in rugby. And then it turns out that the next call is from Kigali. So that's a big discouragement. And I don't know whether it will work, because if we never end up legally being able to deport anyone anywhere, so much for Rwanda.
The Rwandan government has said it can take a maximum of 400 people. It doesn't even begin to scratch the surface.
Yes, I'm trying to get to you. Yes, the woman here with the glasses.
So you talked on and on about safe and legal routes, but they're closed to people from so many areas. I actually live a mile and a half from a hotel which has got almost 200 asylum seekers. A number of them come from Tigray in northern Ethiopia. There's been a war there the past couple of years with over 600,000 deaths. There's been war crimes. It's potentially a genocide, but certainly there's been ethnic cleansing. How could someone from Tigray come to the UK through a safe and legal route? Right now, there's nothing for them.
Okay. The man there in the glass and the blue shirt.
Robert said you don't condone anyone breaking the law, yet you sit there as the immigration minister allowing thousands upon thousands of illegal immigrants coming to the country every single day, and you've been a part of successive Conservative governments over the coming years. So I just don't understand how you can say such things.
Okay. And the man in the middle at the back in the pink shirt.
It sounds like the usual blah, blah, blah from the minister, always telling us what they're going to do but not getting round to delivering it. What I don't understand about government policy, and maybe you could answer it tonight, why are you allowing in 40,000 people a year that we may not need and refusing to bring in lorry drivers, construction people, fruit pickers that actually we do need, and telling retired people to get off the golf course and get back into the employment is not going to solve that problem.
Okay. Yes. The man there with his hand up.
You talked about coming from a safe country. What about those from Ukraine? Surely they've come from a safe country as well.
Sorry, just say that again. I missed the beginning.
Yeah, Mr. Jenrick talked about asylum seekers coming from a safe country, that they shouldn't be allowed. But what about the people from Ukraine? There's safe countries around there as well.
Oh, so you're not suggesting that Ukraine is safe, but they could go to countries near them, which,
yes,
of course, they are doing in large part as well. Do you just want to answer that man's question, that point at the back, that you're letting people come over? Well, you don't want to, but more people are coming across in small boats. And what about getting people into, you know?
Well, look, we don't want people to come across in small boats. I think I've made that very clear. And our
he's saying, why won't you let more people in? Why won't you let more people in to fill the empty jobs?
Well, we have done, is the answer there. Last year, net migration was over 500,000 in this country. And so very large numbers of work visas are being issued, more than we've issued in the past. I don't think that the problems that we face in the labour market will be solved simply by importing more and more foreign labour. I think we actually have to be asking our own companies to invest more in their workforce, to train people. We have to improve the level of vocational and technical training, which we're doing, for example, with T-levels and apprenticeships. And I do think we need a welfare system that encourages people into work, because we have 6 or 7 million people who are economically inactive. And it's going to be by tackling that we boost our economy, rather than simply reaching for foreign labour at the first resort.
13 years to do.
I'm going to move on, but I'd like to hear from you before I do.
It's just the gentleman said is Knowsley safe, and that was the original question, is that the government puts asylum seekers in places which are already deprived quite often because it's easier and cheaper. It outsources them to companies who run them very badly for profit. There's no warning a lot of the time. The hotels just spring up. The reason people are in hotels and hostels for so long is because the backlog is so enormous, and people are there for, months and years. You say you'd like them not to be. Well, they are. That is why they're there. And to blame the people in the hotels and the hostels for being there when the system has completely failed seems to be encouraging people to go round there with hammers and smash up police cars and say, it's your fault you're here. He seems to be encouraging the sort of reaction that social media and the various sort of lunatics who follow that stuff take as read. And I think all of those factors mean you've just got to do better.
Okay. Well, can I say to answer that?
Very briefly,
I
Robert.
could not have been clearer in answering the original question that there is no excuse for violence and the kind of scenes we saw in Knowsley. But if you believe in borders, then you have to say that if people come here illegally in small boats, that is criminality. They might also be vulnerable people, but it is criminality, and we have to stop it.
All right. I'm going to move on. Let's take a question now from Carol Garfield.
Councils are reported to be increasing council tax by up to 5%. If we can't afford the cost of living now, how do they expect us to pay this as well?
Is this something you're worried about, Carol?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's the impact going to be on you?
Well, I'm just bought a house. We've got a mortgage, and we're looking at the moment now the interest rate going up. Everything's gone up from the electricity bills to food bills, everything, and we're really worried about it at the moment. And I know a lot of people are as well, especially the elderly and especially the young families too, that have had gas meters put in for them, that they've got to put money on the cards. And yeah, it's across the board now.
Stephen.
Well, it is a real worry, and the cost of living crisis is biting right across the country. When you look at the news today that Centrica are reporting profits of £3 billion, and you look at the fact that the government is failing to put a proper windfall tax on those energy companies, which Labour's been calling for over a year now, you really do begin to wonder about the priorities of the government. So
do you think that councils should not be allowed to put up council tax by 5%? Which is obviously what the government has now allowed them to do.
Well, because of the broader impact on the economy, the amount of revenue coming into the council from a range of other sources, including, of course, the impact of the massive cuts to local authority budgets that we've seen since 2010, they have no choice but to do it, because councils somehow have to balance the books, and they have a statutory duty to manage their debt. There's a broader picture here, which is about having a central government which is actually on the side of local authorities. That means a central government that taxes the energy companies properly, close the tax loophole, backdate it to when Labour was calling for it, and you generate £13 billion based on the profits of these companies in the UK. This is not global profits. And then you need a proper growth strategy. You need to look at Labour's Green Prosperity Plan, which will invest in insulating homes. 19 million homes would be insulated, saving £1,400 off the average family's energy bill. You need investment in green energy, doubling the amount of offshore and onshore wind, so that we can actually then generate the kind of revenue and the kind of growth and the kind of jobs that you can raise a family on. So there's a bigger picture here, which is about a proper growth strategy, but it's also making sure that you take the right political choices. And one of those clear choices is that these energy companies that are raking in profits from the war, this is the windfall of war. They're making profits off the back of what's happening on Putin's barbaric invasion of Ukraine, and that's why they need to be taxed properly, so that we can use that money for ordinary working people.
Lana.
Okay, I don't think an energy windfall tax is going to bring down this woman's council tax.
Well, the budget is connected, Lionel. There's the central government. And
yes,
local
everything is connected with everything.
Yeah, great. Thanks for recognizing.
But the council tax is just more evidence of inflation. All of the expenses for councils have gone up. They have to cover them.
They've also had a
That's why-
decrease. They've also had a decrease in their funding. I mean, central government grants, which is the amount of money that the government gives to local authorities, was cut by 37%.
Well,
between
all
2010
levels of
and
government
2020.
are suffering from the same inflation that they caused. Okay, so, and that's why inflation is so pernicious, is that it develops momentum and it gets implanted in everything. It's not just a wage price spiral, but everyone's costs start going up. And, you know, I shop in the same shops you do, and I'm absolutely appalled. And it's not just 10%. It's often 50 or 60%. So I know it's easy for Rishi Sunak to get up and say, oh, you know, we have to tame inflation, but it's no joke, and it's a monster, and it's very hard to stop.
It's the man there in the glasses, the blue sweater.
I agree with Mr. Kinnock's view. I think we do need to insulate. The problem we have is you need to plan for the future. So the situation we have now is you need people with those SME knowledge and skills to go in and do solar insulation, look at heat pumps. Now, there's two issues there. There is getting those products, and there's fitting those products. With the resource capacity we have in the country, we just don't have those skills. So look, I would love to get solar in my house. The problem I have is it's going to cost me about £11,000. Can I get a loan for that? I'm not sure I can because I've got a large mortgage. So how would the government enable people like me to go and get those bits of solar in my house to enable me to be more efficient, but also save me some money in the long run? So what would the Labour government do to help me in my position?
So Labour's Green Prosperity Plan includes a big chunk of funding for insulation.
So what would you, to him specifically, what would you do for him?
Based on government grants to support, on a cost-sharing basis, the insulation that's required. You're right that the abject failure of the government to plan for this and to create the capacity and the capability...
he's asking what you do, in fairness.
Yes, but that's what we are going to have to play catch-up. So when we take over, which I obviously
So what
hope
you're
that we
saying,
will.
just to be clear, what you're saying is you'll give him some of the money?
Yes, there is a funding model in place to make it happen.
That was a when we take over. Can I just record that for posterity?
Okay, all right.
Front foot confidence.
The man there, yes, I can't quite see what you're wearing. You've got a blue shirt on, yeah.
With the addition of a windfall tax, will it or will it not encourage businesses with big budgets to try and avoid tax or move elsewhere?
All right, listen, I'll come back to you because I want to get around the rest of the panel. There's a woman right at the back who had her hand up. Yes, there you are. I can hardly see you, yeah.
I think hard-working people really are struggling, and it's not something that we should just laugh at or ignore. So I think the knock-on effect of that is people are going to be going on the welfare system because there is no incentive to work. What has the government got in plans for that?
Robert?
Well, of course, people are suffering right across the country. I'm sure they are here in Rugby as well. And it's for that reason that we've consistently tried to take steps to help as many people as we can, and particularly the most vulnerable in society, whether that was the work that we did during the pandemic, helping those people who were out of work or at risk of being out of work through the furlough scheme, or more recently with the support with energy bills. But I won't pretend that we're capable of insulating everyone from these massive global pressures. Inflation, as Lionel said, just is the great evil here. It is very pernicious, it's harmful to everyone in society, and it has to be at the absolute heart of our economic policy to bring it down. I'm pleased to say that it is starting to fall, but it remains both very high and in some aspects, like food, which of course hits the hardest people, the most vulnerable people in society the hardest, it remains stubbornly high. So we're going to do everything that we can as a government to bring that down. The Prime Minister said it as one of his objectives for this year to halve it over the course of the year, and we don't want to take any decision that might jeopardise that. On the question on council tax, we're not mandating councils to put up council tax. We understand the pressures.
You've given them the
pressures they're
option
under,
to do
but we're
that.
giving them the flexibility to do that if they want to or feel they have to. Some have chosen not to. I've seen in the last week a number have chosen to continue to freeze council tax, but some have done. And I understand that that is a product of inflation. I would take issue with what Stephen has said about cuts to council budgets and so on. In my almost 3 years as local government secretary, time and again, I saw some of the most egregious examples of waste in Labour councils that I've ever seen in my life. In Liverpool, in Slough,
how about Croydon?
In Croydon,
Thurrock,
in Nottingham.
They're Tories.
Thurrock is a bad example. Thurrock is a bad example. But the general point is true, Ian. It's one that Private Eye specialises in exposing, that these were really appalling examples of mismanagement. There are better ways of running local councils, and there are ways of trying to alleviate the pressures on local communities.
Ian. Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the problems local council faces is they are desperately short of money. There's a £3 billion budget shortfall. So local councils start thinking, how on earth do we raise money? So they start trying to become property developers or energy companies. And it's just amazing what some local authorities have tried to do to raise money. And they failed abysmally. This isn't their job. And the worst of them have gone spectacularly bankrupt. Right. Now, Michael Gove, of all people, said there were significant failures in local leadership and in financial management, and that's of Tory councils. And the people who failed the most are allowed to put up the council tax the most. So they don't stop at 5%. It'll be above that. It'll be 15%. It'll be 10%.
Well, Croydon, for example, has increased their rates by 15%.
Yeah, and they're spectacularly useless and spectacularly bankrupt. All I'm saying is there is incompetence here as well as underfunding.
Okay.
And I'm very grateful for the plug for the Rotten Boroughs column.
In case you didn't know. Ruth.
Well, the thing about this is when you talk about flexibility, giving councils flexibility, Robert, but actually the flexibility you've given them is to give them less money and expect them to do more with it. Now, the 5% has been...
Well, it's all taxpayers' money, whether it's central or local.
The 5% is been picked on by, I think, 84 out of 114 English councils, 84 out of 114. So when you say some people aren't putting taxes up by 5%, most of them are. And one of the reasons they are is because they've got a huge... I mean, I'm not at all unsympathetic about the lady talking about the cost of living. Everybody is suffering now, and the last thing they need is a bigger council tax bill. But councils are stripped as well. They're cash-strapped. They're having to find money for things like social care. And because of the situation across the board, there's more need for social care than ever before, and the budgets for social care are getting squeezed, and the people who need social care most are not getting it. And central government, meanwhile, is squeezing local councils, and local councils are not crying. Most of them are not crying wolf. I pay respect to the rotten boroughs who are behaving badly, but most of them are not crying wolf. Most of them are in really serious, deep doo-doo.
I'm going to try and get one more question as we've got 10 minutes, but just very briefly, Stephen, windfall tax, encourage or deterrence to investment, which is a question you were asking.
It won't make any difference because these are taxes on the excess profits. So profits that have been created by Putin's barbaric invasion of Ukraine have generated massive profit in addition to what these companies would usually have been making. So it won't make any difference.
Can we have other windfall taxes? PPE suppliers?
Yeah.
Right, we've got 10 minutes. I want to get this last question, if I can, from Julia Lynn.
1/5 of knife crimes in the UK are committed by children, and knife attacks are up by around 30% since 2010. How can we tackle this?
I mean, it's worth repeating that, isn't it? 1/5 of knife crimes in the UK are committed by children. We've had a very high-profile one in the last weekend when I was just looking into this before we started this programme. It just came on one after another, just a depressing and horrifying litany. How do we tackle this, Lionel?
Well, I would just, I mean, the tools are limited, but I go back to old-fashioned policing, more police on the streets, you know, let's let them off Twitter duty and stop prosecuting people for using the wrong pronoun and go after kids who are carrying knives. And we probably do have to have a degree of stop and search. I'm very uncomfortable with that. I think it's alienating. I would find it offensive to be patted down by some policeman, but it can be effective. So I don't know what else. Aside, you know, there's having more youth programs But we just heard about how strapped councils are, so I'm a little skeptical on that front.
Woman there in the stripy sweater.
We should be looking at why. Why is it happening? And
what's your view?
I think it will be partly to do with poverty, youth programmes, maybe parenting, maybe school. There's a whole societal breakdown in some issues, but we should be understanding why before we can come up with the solutions. I'd be interested to hear what the panel thinks why it is.
Okay, I'll get round the audience a bit more first. Yes, the man there at the back with the dark jacket on. Yes.
There used to be a time where police prevented crime. They were like a deterrent. I think now they turn up when a crime's already happened, take some notes, and you never see them again. I think they're kind of glorified office workers. The lady here mentions the why, right? I think bad parenting, poverty has existed for a long time. There's nothing new there, except now the kids have knives as well. So maybe if the police did more to prevent crimes in the first place, we wouldn't see this.
Okay, and the woman here in the middle with the glasses and the blue and white dress.
I think it's heartbreaking that so many of our young people are carrying weapons of any sort, whether that be knives or guns, in our schools and on the streets. I think it's really, really important that as schools and education, we get the funding so that we can actually offer the policing programmes and other external agency programmes to support our young people and educate them. It might be parenting, it might be poverty, but we actually need to educate those young people that are carrying those weapons, and that is absolutely vital, and schools need the funding to be able to do that.
And you're saying this, are you involved with education then?
Yes, I'm a head teacher.
And are you seeing kids with knives in school? Is this something you're aware of at your school? Have I put you on the spot there? You're looking uncomfortable with that question. Forgive me. I'm not asking you to name names. I just wondered if that was an issue you were aware of.
Yes, we have been aware of it, and across Coventry. I'm from Coventry. Across the city, it's a deprived city, and it's the knife crime on the Coventry streets is really, really sad, and it's heartbreaking. But we need the funding in education so that we can actually start to support these young people, find out the why, and give them the tools to get away from knife crime, gangs, etc., that you spoke about earlier.
So, Stephen, it's such a massive question. How do we tackle this?
I think the collapse in police morale and collapse in police numbers that we've seen since 2010 has played a big role in this. Neighbourhood policing in particular is vitally important. So Yvette Cooper, our Shadow Home Secretary, announced today Labour's policy on getting 13,000 more neighbourhood police and PCSOs, paid for through changing the way in which procurement is done and other cost-saving measures. And that would actually start to get police patrols back into our town centres, integrated into the community, working more effectively with young people and dealing with the epidemic of antisocial behaviour. 3,000 antisocial behaviour reports per day in our country. So we need to get policing back up to the numbers that it needs to be. We need to have a neighbourhood policing guarantee, and we need to be working in the communities and getting the intelligence in the communities that's required.
I'm interested in everybody thinking that police are the answer to everything, but I have to say that Glasgow had a terrible reputation for knife crime for many, many, many years. It was an appalling place for the carrying of knives. They set up a violence reduction unit, and what was unique about the violence reduction unit was that it wasn't just about police, it was about housing, it was about health, it was a holistic look at what was happening. And it was so successful that the London Mayor has taken up a very similar
The homicide rate in Scotland more than halved since this violence reduction unit was established.
But it was very specifically, as I say, a holistic approach. It wasn't just a more police approach, which I think is too simplistic, to be honest with you. But
all right. Well, should we see if the government's interested in that? Is that something you'd like to emulate?
It is, and it's something that we have been doing elsewhere in the country. This is a difficult challenge, but it is not insurmountable. As you've heard, there are places that have taken action. I represent parts of Nottinghamshire, and not so long ago, Nottingham had a very serious knife crime problem. It's much less so today, due to taking the kind of holistic approach that's been described around education. Social media, I think, plays a role as well. Role models, national and local, and of course a role for the police. It is important that we focus the police on the things that really matter, as Lionel said, and knife crime, protecting our children.
Well, Lionel said they need to spend less time on Twitter.
I agree. I think you want more common sense policing. I want police officers to be focused on the bread and butter things that affect all of our lives, not on Twitter and some of the more woke issues. I would, if I may, just take issue with what Stephen said, where he said there's been a collapse in police morale and numbers. That isn't true. Actually, by the end of March, there will be more police officers on the beat in this country than at any
replacing
time
the 20,000
in
that
history.
you cut.
More, Stephen. By the end of March, there will be more police officers on the beat in England and Wales, not just than there were when we came to power in 2010, than in any time in our history.
Okay.
So I'm afraid that isn't correct, Stephen. You should get the facts right.
They're leaving the force in droves.
Ian.
I agree.
With who? Because we have differing opinions here.
No, mostly with the audience. I mean, I do think this is an issue for a wider approach, the police. And I did notice the story of the London mayor having to take advice from Glasgow on how to reduce knife crime, which I'm sure pleased people in Scotland.
Actually, we're not hearing you quite as wonderfully clearly as we might because your hand's over your microphone. No, just so you don't fold your arms, that's all.
Oh, sorry. It's a defensive position. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, don't bother. I haven't got anything to say.
OK, on that note, the woman here with her hand up in the grey jacket.
I agree. I don't think the response to all of this type of treatment around knife crime should be the police. I think we need to engage with community leaders such as sports coaches, youth workers. And I did a brief stint for a charity business in the community where, frankly, I learned an awful lot from local community leaders, and the MP, which shall remain unnamed, was very disinterested. And that, for me, is at the heart of why we've got this breakdown between our young people in this country.
You can name names. You're among friends.
Liam and his Labour.
Right, OK. He wasn't very interested.
I've just remembered what I had to say.
Go on, very quickly. You've got a minute left in.
Oh, good. I think the opposite of effective policing, effective dealing of knife crime is not, let's not be woke. I think that's just a really sort of diverting and sort of pointless response. It deserves better than that. They aren't polar opposites.
All right, I've got 20 seconds left. I'm going to hear from this man in the glasses and the jacket.
Yeah, so just going back to the point about the council tax being pulled up by 5%.
Oh, hang on, we're talking about knife crime now.
No, I'm going on to it, Fiona. In the Neaton where I live, they're actually just turning the lights off. So going back to knife crime and feeling safe, walking down just a general road or high street, I'm not saying that's why it's happening, but people are becoming more worried about going out.
Because the streets are dark.
The streets are so much darker. I don't know about in Rugby, but certainly in the Neaton, certainly are.
That's what you're noticing. All right, well, thank you for that. Our time is up. Our hour is over. Oh, my God, it goes quick. Don't you think? Thank you very much to the panel, to our audience here. Thank you very much for coming along and putting your point. And, of course, thank you to you at home for watching. We are in Cardiff and then Sunderland. So do go to the Question Time website if you want to be part of that audience. And don't forget, if it's too late to watch us after 10 o'clock news, we are live on the iPlayer at 8 o'clock every week. From Rugby, from all of us here. Until next time, bye-bye.
Or, if you completely fucking forget, because Parliament's on recess, that Question Time is still on during recess, you can watch it the next day on my fucking channel. For free. Don't even need a fucking TV license. Woohoo. There you go. I've just saved the taxpayer millions. Just saying. Don't know why I'd be fucking paid for the BBC, but oh well. Hey, we live in a backward country. We voted for the Tories 3 times, 4 times, 3. Who cares, anyway? Knife crime. How to deal with knife crime? I don't know. Stop making fucking kids poor so they have to sell fucking drugs and carry knives. Do you know why they carry knives? Because they're in fucking gangs and they don't get stabbed by the mates who was also selling drugs down the street. That's why they sell. That's why they have knives. Don't have knives because they're fucking happy little chappies. No, they sell fucking drugs. You know why? Because they're poor. That's all. And clearly, that's literally the only fucking reason. If anyone wants to tell me another fucking reason, I'll be more than happy to listen. More than happy. To be fair, I never carried a knife when I was a kid. Carried a pellet gun though. Which isn't the same thing. But hey, I don't live in this fucking social media fucked up fucking land as a kid. I wouldn't know. Maybe it's just to like protect yourself. I mean, fucking hell, back in my day, you didn't get knifed, you just got shot. I know, plenty of my friends are fucking dead because of it. Oh well. In fact, I had one special friend. He got the special treatment. He got burnt in the back of a fucking car. Over a chain, of all things. A gold chain. Sizzled in the back of a car. What a horrible way to die. Burnt alive. In a car. Immigration. Let's just blow up France or invade it. Easy problem to solve. Invade France. We did it before. We can do it again. Here we go. Just invade France. That's the immigration problem solved. Crisis of eating food and all that shit and inflation. Tax the fucking rich. I don't see the argument against taxing the rich other than like if you're rich. Oh well, they just moved country. Go on then. Like, bye. Like, if you don't want to pay your taxes, then fuck off. It's literally that simple. So yeah, tax the rich into oblivion. Fuck them all. I mean, who needs $1 billion fucking dollars or £1 billion? You can't even count that fucking high. In fact, you will die before you even get to the end of $1 billion if you started counting at the age of 6 months. If you could even fucking count at the age of 6 months old, you would still die as a human. That's how much money these people have. And they're like, oh, we've got no money. Yeah, because all the rich people have it. Where do you think it is? Rich people caused inflation when they fucking destroyed the entire economy with a giant Ponzi scheme called fucking mortgages. Yeah? People forget that shit. In 2008/10, when we had to save the banks, didn't need to save the banks at all. Could have just nationalised a fucking lot of them. But oh no, let's save them. Let's save all the rich people from being poor. You know, back in the day, they just killed themselves because there was no safety net. That was in the 20s. They just all killed themselves because they knew there was like, oh, I'm going to be poor. Just kill myself. Go on then. Twats. So yeah, fuck the rich. And for all you stupid people who still fucking consider voting Tory, oh my god. It blows my mind. I still watch people literally say, well, not too sure about Labour. Are you kidding me? You're not too sure about Labour. They haven't been in power since Tony Blair. And Tony Blair was literally the best Prime Minister we ever had, apart from the Iraq War. Facts. PFI, yeah, that was an issue. And the only reason why he did the whole PFI shit is because, well, we had Margaret Thatcher for 18 years. I mean, it's like this country forgets that the Tories are fucking horrible fucking cunts. And the only time our country's ever been fucking, like, literally fucking remotely stable was when we had Labour in power. That's it. And the Tories get away with murder. Like, literally, they've destroyed our country beyond fucking, like, comprehension in my mind. They give us this trust. I mean, that is not a fucking enough of a warning for you not to trust these fucking clowns already. And people go, well, the country didn't vote for this trust. No, the Tories did, though. Them fucking old, decrepit, xenophobic racists, all 250,000 of them, didn't listen to Rishi fucking Paki Sunak. Oh, no, no, no. Don't listen to him. He's black. He literally told all the Tories, this bitch is crazy. I used to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer. She's a fucking loon. Yeah, not gonna vote for you. You fucking migrant. This country's fucked, and it's full of fucking racists. People go, oh, this country's not racist. Yeah, it is. You see how many people fucking bang on about immigration? Stupid twats. And you know why that is? Because our fucking media's full of fucking right-wing fucking crackers anyway. Don't fucking batshit crazy. You got Nigel Farage banging on every fucking 5 minutes that we're being invaded. Invaded by migrants? You'd think we live in fucking World War II or some shit. We're being invaded. More people invade Spain than come over here on a fucking boat. You're having a laugh. I feel sorry for the Spanish. Bunch of fucking Anglo-Saxons invading fucking Spain. Fucking louts. Jesus Christ, honestly. You can't make it up, can you? Praise the day when we get Labour back in power. We should have something to complain about. Like, socialism. Like, this is mad, innit? Like, people go, oh, socialist. Okay, you show me any socialist country and see how that works out for you. Because there isn't any. Even the ones that you think are socialist aren't socialist. Because it doesn't exist. In case you fucking didn't notice, everybody uses this weird thing called fucking money. Which is the exact opposite of an actual socialist government, technically speaking. Like, 100% socialist government. Even China doesn't go that fucking crazy. China is like, yeah, let's be a bunch of commies. Oh no, let's not do that, because that's a stupid fucking idea. Let's be fucking capitalists. Much more fun. And much more easier to fucking brainwash people into thinking that rich people aren't fucking rich. when they're ludicrously fucking rich. There's more billionaires today than there's ever been before. And the living standards of the average person in the Western Hemisphere is fucking lower than it's ever been before. I wonder why that is. Because the politicians we elect are in bed with the same fucking crack of fucking companies who write the fucking laws to lower their taxes. There's still a thing called a tax haven. Can you imagine that? Tax havens by companies. Oh, well, they just moved the taxes. Just ban them from the country then, innit? Just saying, it's a simple solution. If you don't want to pay taxes in a fucking capitalist fucking nation, then it's clearly something's gone fucking wrong there, innit? Get the point. So yes, bring back Labour and tax these fuckers at 80%. 80%. If you earn over £1 million, I want 80% of your fucking money for the NHS or whatever the fucking is. Because you know who makes the fucking actual money in any country? The fucking workers, not the people who decide to divvy out after they've took all the profits. That's not corporate. That's not capitalism, mate. That's kleptocracy. I can't even say the fucking word. Whatever. Fascism with a C. Basically. You know, in Italy, right? There's a company in Italy that actually all the workers who work there get literally the same percentage of the profits as the CEO. Now, wouldn't that be a fucking nice thing, right? So let's say you work for a company who makes, I don't know, $1 billion in profits or whatever. Everybody who works for the company in that space of time when them profits were made all get a paycheck. All of them, they all get a paycheck for the exact amount as the CEO. And it's divvied out between the entire company. Wouldn't that be nice? Instead of you sitting there on fucking, I don't know, £10 an hour, slogging your bollocks off while the CEO does fuck all, gets like 10 times what you fucking do in a day. Just saying. It's fucking... It's a mad thing where people think capitalism and this weird free markets. That's like... Have you ever played Monopoly before? Anybody? You played Monopoly? Yeah. How does that work out for you? That's the capitalism we live in, mate. And I always like to be the banker in Monopoly. Just saying. Anywho. God's gift to mankind is question time, clearly. And I forgot it was on yesterday, so I thought I'd give you a gift of my time and give it to you today. But I will be back on the 20th, I think. I don't know if Lord of Coomsby is going to be on Sunday, to be honest. But yeah, recess ends on the 20th. I didn't notice I was going to stream on Monday. I was like, where's Politics Live? Oh, they're in recess. Didn't know that. But apparently they are. So yeah, politicians got a week off for fuck all. And they earn 84 grand a year. Wish I could take a fucking week off work and get paid 80 grand a year. Anywho, goodbyes. And I will see you on Sunday, hopefully.